My name is Captain Ryan Blake. I'm 38 years old, and for the last 15 years, I served in the United States Army with everything I had. My grandfather fought in Korea, my father in Vietnam, and I always knew I'd follow that path. Order, structure, duty. Those weren't just words in our house. They were the way we lived. I rose through the ranks, not because I chased glory, but because I did the work no one wanted to do. I handled logistics when it meant sleeping 4 hours a night. I led personnel when others passed the baton. I wrote protocols by hand, ran point on messy deployments, and patched holes no one else even saw. I wasn't flashy, but I was solid, and solid kept things running. 15 years in, I thought I'd earned a place that couldn't just be brushed aside. Turns out I was wrong. Things shifted the day they brought in Colonel Sanderson. Fresh face, Ivy League, always talking in metrics and alignment. Never once looked a soldier in the eye for more than a second. He called my unit bloated, said we needed strategic modernization. That was the first red flag. The second came when I saw him walking past me without even stopping, not once during inspection week. A commander who doesn't acknowledge a captain who's held the line through 3 command turnovers, that's not oversight, that's a message. It started slow. One by one, my responsibilities were reassigned. A briefing I used to lead suddenly became a junior officer's task. A base report I authored got rerouted through a new analytics team. I asked questions, got soft answers. It's a transition period, nothing to worry about. Standard realignment. I've seen realignments before. This wasn't one, this was a quiet shuffle meant to phase me out without a confrontation, to make me invisible until I folded on my own. But I don't fold. I never have. By the time I realized what was happening, the new leadership had already moved to cancel the field rotation I designed. No explanation, no feedback, just gone. A year of planning, logistics, coordination, wiped off the board with a memo. They didn't say it directly, but I knew what I'd become to them. Legacy baggage, too experienced to fire without backlash, too old school to promote under their shiny new vision. I was the reminder of a time before the spreadsheets ran the show. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. That's not how I was raised. But I took notes. I watched, I waited, and quietly I made sure that everything I touched had structure behind it. Documented, traceable, unshakable. Just in case the day came when someone thought they could cut me loose without reading the fine print. Turns out that day came sooner than I expected. And when it did, I was ready. Not out of spite, out of principle. Because I believe in order. And if they were going to break it, I was going to remind them what it costs. They called it a leadership realignment. No warning, no build-up. Just a calendar invite with my name, the base CRO, and someone from personnel marked as advisor. When I walked into that conference room, I already knew what it was. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and tension. One of those hollow base offices with laminate wood and a thermostat that never works. The personnel officer, a woman I'd never seen before, smiled like she was trying not to flinch. She greeted me too softly, like someone apologizing for a car alarm they couldn't shut off. The CRO, Lieutenant Colonel Sanderson, leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, fingertips together like he'd practiced the pose. His tie was too perfect, his face unreadable. They didn't waste time. She started with buzzwords. You've been a core pillar. These transitions are never easy. Our vision is evolving. She said evolve like it meant progress, like it meant cleaning up a mess that had been mine. Sanderson didn't say much. He didn't have to. He just nodded occasionally, like he was confirming what she read off the script. When I looked at him, he met my eyes once, then dropped them, as if even he didn't believe what they were doing. I stayed quiet, let them talk, let them shape the narrative, but inside, my mind was taking notes, every phrase, every shift in posture, the way she avoided saying the word termination, the way he kept looking at the clock. They called it a reassignment, an opportunity to advise from the civilian side. Temporary, of course, strategic repositioning. I knew what it was. They didn't want me making noise. They didn't want headlines. They wanted me to walk out clean, no questions, no trail. So I nodded. I kept my voice level. I said I understood. I thanked them for the opportunity. My face didn't move, but my spine locked into place, because I knew what was coming next. They hadn't read the fine print. She slid a folder across the table. Severance package, non-disclosure, a timeline that ended before the next quarter. I didn't touch it, not yet. I asked if I could take my materials with me. She looked at Sanderson. He hesitated, then nodded. I stood up. My binder was under the chair, red tab still poking out like a warning light. I zipped it into my pack without a word. As I turned to leave, Sanderson opened his mouth like he might say something, then stopped. Maybe he thought I'd be grateful. Maybe he thought I'd beg. He didn't understand. I'd been trained to observe under pressure, to act under silence. I didn't need revenge. I needed time. And now I had both. As I stepped into the hallway, the air felt too cold, like the base itself knew what just happened. I walked slowly, one foot after the other, every sound echoing too loud. The binder felt heavier than it should have. Inside that binder was the clause. I'd buried it 6 months ago. Section 4B, subsection C, named officer termination without reassignment clause, signed by legal, approved by contract, untouched by them. By the time they figured it out, the penalty clock would already be ticking. I wasn't walking away defeated. I was walking away in formation. The mission wasn't over. It was just changing shape. And I was ready. I didn't go to the gym. Didn't stop by the mess hall or drive through the gate like anything had changed. I went straight home, parked, and walked inside without turning on a single light. My boots hit the tile like they had something to prove. The binder was still on the shelf, 3rd row, 2nd slot, tucked between training manuals and old after-action reports. I pulled it down slow, the way you'd handle something loaded. Red tab still marked the page. My thumb found it without even looking. The clause was right where I'd left it. Section 4B, paragraph 3. I read it aloud in my head, slow and deliberate. Should the named service officer be terminated, reassigned, or otherwise removed without written approval from the contractor, a penalty of $200,000 per operational day shall be applied retroactively until rectification. Every word tight. No wiggle. Signed by base legal, countersigned by external. And the best part? That signature at the bottom. Colonel Sanderson. Inked 3 months before he decided I was expendable. He didn't read it. I knew from the timestamp. 2 minutes between receipt and return. You don't verify legal in 2 minutes. It wasn't spite when I drafted it. It was structure. I wrote it after he no-showed on a call with the contractor for the 2nd time that month. Left me standing alone, answering questions that should have come from command. They asked me to stay point, said they trusted me. So I made sure their trust had teeth. I ran my fingers down the margin where I'd flagged the clause in red. It was clean, it was quiet, and now it was active. They hadn't named a replacement. They hadn't even filed notice. They walked me out like I was yesterday's paperwork. But this clause, it just became today's problem. I closed the binder, slow and sure. No grin, no satisfaction, just purpose. This wasn't about revenge. This was about consequence. You don't cut out the spine of an operation and expect it to stand. They thought I'd disappear, fade off quietly, retire with grace. But I was never just another name on a roster. I was the one who kept the system running when they stopped paying attention. And now, the system was going to remind them what that costs. I set the binder on the table, poured a cup of stale coffee, sat in silence, not thinking about next steps, just letting the reality settle. The clause was real. The consequences were inbound. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. The call came in at 7:06 a.m. sharp. I hadn't even poured my coffee yet. The name on the screen was Marcus Talley, the external liaison from the defense contractor. Solid guy, always played it straight. His voice wasn't angry. It was clinical. They froze. Everything. Systems locked. Field assets on hold. Payment channels disabled. All tied to a clause breach filed at 6:42 a.m. Their legal team time-stamped it and sent formal notification. $250,000 per operational day. Backdated to yesterday. Marcus said he'd never seen them move this fast. That's how I knew it wasn't just protocol. It was personal. The contractor wanted answers and didn't care who gave them. Inside an hour, base ops was on fire. Phones ringing non-stop. Slack threads collapsing under panic. Someone tried logging into the secure portal and hit a wall of access denied. Logistics flagged it. Finance screamed. Personnel ducked. Legal scrambled to find out who had authority to override a breach. I didn't call anyone, didn't send a message. I just sat on my back porch and listened to the chaos echo across command like a thunderclap. This wasn't sabotage. It was structure, and structure always bites when it's ignored. At 8:13, my old assistant sent a short message. 2 words. It's live. 10 minutes later, Sanderson himself tried to call. I let it ring. Let it die. He followed up with a message asking what the hell was happening. I waited 2 minutes, then typed 4 words. Red tab. Section 4B. That was all. Nothing else. No threats, no gloating. Just a reference. But I knew he'd feel it like a gut punch. Because that binder wasn't just a file. It was a fuse. And now, the whole base had to watch it burn. Legal started digging, rechecked every document, found the signatures, found the approval, found the clause sitting there in black and white with his initials right beside mine. They couldn't edit it, couldn't walk it back. It was baked into the contract. They tried calling the contractor, tried to explain, said it was an oversight. The contractor replied with a single sentence. We are operating under signed terms. No substitutions accepted without prior written approval. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just poured my coffee, opened the binder again, and flipped the pages slowly. Calm, steady, in control. They had walked me out thinking they won. But I hadn't written my last order. I'd just written the one that mattered most. From that point forward, they weren't in charge anymore. The contractor was, and the only person who could fix it was the one they pushed aside. I didn't need to yell to be heard. I just needed to write clearly. Now, they had no choice but to read. By mid-morning, the legal office had gone full lockdown. Doors closed, phones off speaker, eyes red from scanning every line of contract documentation. The Sierra clause had been bad enough, but what came next turned panic into full-blown crisis. They found 2 more. Different contracts, different agencies, same trap. One tied to a cybersecurity rollout with a strict federal oversight clause. The other linked to a transportation upgrade funded through state defense grants. Both named me as the service officer. Both included the same penalty language. The legal team huddled, silent, sweating. One by one, they matched my signature with Sanderson's, then pulled the scanned PDFs showing everything had been reviewed. No backdating, no gaps. These weren't mistakes. They were protocol, legally binding and fully active. Project managers started getting flagged. Contractors pulled their people from sites. Deadlines froze. Billing systems shut down. The ripple was fast, brutal, and precise. What was once seen as over-preparation now looked like foresight they had never earned. Slack exploded. Word spread fast. Not just in ops, but finance, IT, even logistics. Everyone had questions, and no one had answers. Officers whispered in hallways. Junior staff forwarded emails they barely understood. People stopped asking if the clause was real. They started asking how many more there were. Revenue halted. Systems stalled. Command looked paralyzed. What had started as one overlooked clause now looked like a pattern, executed with care, triggered by arrogance. The contractors no longer trusted base leadership, and neither did the people under them. It wasn't sabotage, it was structure. Legal couldn't unwrite it. Ops couldn't override it. And now, nobody could pretend I was just another officer shuffled off the board. They'd underestimated the man who wrote the rules. Now they were playing catch-up in a game they no longer controlled. The call came just after noon. Same number, same voice. Colonel Sanderson didn't waste time with pleasantries. He sounded older, thinner somehow, like the last 48 hours had drained whatever confidence he had left. The unit was in chaos. Contracts locked, operations stalled, and external partners refusing to take meetings unless I was in the room. He said the secretary's office had been briefed. They needed a reset. His words, not mine. I let the silence stretch, not to be dramatic, just to make it clear who had the leverage now. When I finally spoke, it was quiet, but firm. I'm willing to return, I said, but only under 3 conditions. First, full reinstatement. Same rank, same clearance, but with operational independence. Second, I report directly to the Secretary of Defense. No detours, no middlemen. Third, I hold complete authority over contractual structure, compliance protocols, and client engagement. No ceremony, no welcome parade. I wasn't looking for redemption. I wanted structure. What they broke, I was willing to rebuild, but only if they stayed out of the way. He paused. I heard him exhale. Then he said the one thing I didn't expect. Understood. I'll make the call. I ended the conversation right there. Not cold, just done. There was no victory lap to run. The mission had changed. I wasn't going back to be a cog in the machine. I was going back to realign the entire framework. And this time, I'd make damn sure nobody missed the fine print. I walked through the gate at 0800. No escort, no salute. Just the familiar sound of boots on concrete and a clipboard under my arm. The base didn't look different. Same guard tower, same wind slicing across the gravel lot. But the silence felt heavier, like it was waiting for something. Inside, nobody said much. A few nods. One quick glance from the admin clerk who used to triple-check my paperwork. She looked down fast. I headed straight for my old office. The door still had my nameplate. Somebody had peeled it off, then taped it back again. I pushed the door open and stepped in. Same desk, same worn leather chair. And right where I left it, the empty corner where the binder used to sit. I placed it down slowly, red tab facing forward. Didn't unzip it, didn't say a word, just let it rest. Solid, final. Within an hour, the legal team sent over a request. They wanted digital access to clause logs and compliance templates. No message, just the request. I approved it without comment. By lunch, junior officers started knocking. Quiet questions, soft voices, asking how I wrote Section 4B, asking how I saw it coming. I didn't preach. I didn't scold. I showed them where the structure begins, pointed to dates, phrasing, approvals, walked them through the risk ladders, made it real. You could feel the shift, less noise, more focus. Like someone had reset the clock. Nobody asked for a speech. Nobody offered congratulations. They didn't have to. Respect doesn't come from applause. It comes from knowing the job, holding the line, and standing when others fold. That red binder never left my desk again. It wasn't a trophy. It was a map. A reminder that the rules only work if people care enough to follow them. And that if you write them right, they hold, no matter who's in the chair. By the end of the week, I was running daily syncs with ops and legal. Brief, tight, quiet. We didn't talk about the breakdown. We just rebuilt, page by page, clause by clause, with no shortcuts. And when the new officers asked why I didn't push for ceremony or title or commendation, I just looked at them and said, structure doesn't need applause. It just needs to be respected. The coffee was bitter, not because they burned it, just old beans brewed too early. I sat on the edge of the training field, watching recruits push through drills I could do in my sleep. Distance made everything feel smaller. The buildings, the problems, even the fight. No one sat with me. I didn't need the company. Quiet had always been my ally. The wind cut low across the asphalt. The kind of wind that feels clean, like a reset. My mug steamed in the cold. I thought about that meeting, the way they smiled like it wasn't personal, the file folder, the severance, the look in Travis's eyes when he realized I'd walked out with structure in my bag. That wasn't revenge. That was clarity. A system working the way it should. And it only hurt because they never thought it would matter. I didn't plan to come back. Not because I couldn't, because they didn't deserve it. But when the structure collapsed and the calls came pouring in, I remembered what I'd built. I didn't do it for them. I did it for the people still out here, the ones who still believed in the work. So I came back, not to be celebrated, not to be thanked. I came back because the job wasn't finished, and structure needs someone to carry it, not wave it around like a banner. Just carry it, quietly, precisely. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd let it all fall. If I'd taken the binder and walked for good, they would have found someone else, but not someone ready, not someone who'd seen the cracks before they formed. So now I sit, watching the next generation run drills I once designed, and I wonder what they'll carry one day. Not medals, not slogans, maybe just one clause. Maybe just one line that holds when everything else breaks. Would you have taken the job back? Knowing what they did, knowing how it ended. Would you have come back if they gave you power, but not trust? Authority, but not apology? I don't have the answer. I just know I couldn't let it end the way they planned. Not when the structure still needed a spine. Not when the system was still worth saving.